Yeah, so Eric and I have been working on a membership plan for Incosi Canada, and we believe this membership model that we're developing in the Systematics Society is applicable to all kinds of organizations, including Incosi Canada and the SD chapter, Canada chapter, and the SD Irish chapter, and volunteer organizations and businesses of all kinds. So we're going to talk today about this membership plan idea that Eric and I are developing based on the model that we were working on for the Systematics Society, and try to reflect on how this could be generalized to other groups, and maybe Martha was interested in, is how we can do this in a way that doesn't burn out volunteers. So I don't know, where do you want to start, Eric?
Well, if Martha, if you want to talk about volunteers, I think that's a good start. We'd start there. We'd start first with how do we get more volunteers, right? How do we create the excitement for people to want to volunteer? Then how do we maintain the current amount of volunteers? Whoever's volunteering, how do we make sure that those volunteers are happy with what they're doing and they're consistent and they stay and they attract more? And how do we prevent, like you said, burnout and people leaving volunteers or leaving the volunteer in a way where we don't want them to leave, right? Like we want them to leave in a way that's on a good terms, like they're retiring or they've served their time or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we could break down literally the volunteer flow itself. I think that'd be cool.
That's the paradigm I'm kind of working with. Actually, it's just very much a linear stock and flow with an inflow, a lifespan, and the accumulation in between, the behavior over time in between.
Yeah, and this would be a zooming in on the model, right? Like we're not talking about potential members anymore, because in this our particular model we have potential member to right, so to novice to
Yep,
competent to expert, but then in
yep,
between competent and expert they're turning into volunteers. So this is like a zoomed in version of a much bigger model.
yep, yep. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I think in terms of multi-solving and the concept of co-benefits, I just think that there are multiple rewards and multiple goals to becoming a volunteer. Not too early, but there is a sort of a tipping point or a trigger point at which it really does become helpful, I think, in a holistic learning and holistic experience of like being in system dynamics. There are just so many cool benefits to volunteering in the society that come back to making you a different modeler, if you will, than if you did not have the volunteer experience of being in the system dynamic society and being exposed to very experienced modelers who themselves are doing volunteer work. It's this whole other parallel pathway outside of the modeling skills itself. It has to do with the a lot to do with the implementation of these skills, because you see people like Thomas Wittig and Rafat and Birgit. These people are using their problem solving skills methodologies to be trying to solve and advance actual problems and challenges in the society, and just to be an observer of that, sort of learning just by exposure to listening to how their minds work as a volunteer.
Yeah, so I think what Eric's talking about is focusing in on this area here of instructors, teachers, and trainers, but making that volunteers rather than just instructors, teachers, and trainers. Is that correct, Eric?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think what would be interesting too is to, I guess maybe for real quick before we get into volunteers, kind of like to kind of go over again what he was talking about, Martha, that we've been talking about, is like you could swap out the word members for anything. Like it could be clients, it could be customers, it could be patients, it could be anything. Like, so, right. So if I'm an app developer, I have potential users. Then all of a sudden you have a novice user who's starting out to use your app. Then you have the competent user. So if I'm Adobe, right, I have people who are just learning Photoshop. So I have a novice user, and then I have a competent user, someone who's very good and fluent on
Okay.
using, right, and then a volunteer of
Okay.
Adobe could be like somebody on YouTube who's an instructor. So right now I take my skill, my love for Adobe, and I'm making YouTube videos on teaching newbies how to, you know, do the basics of layering and
Yep.
compositing and different things.
But
Yeah.
the unit of measure is always people, right?
People, yeah, it's always this particular model for me is a flow of people through time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and even the competency of the volunteer evolves over time. When I look at my own pathway, I started off in certain areas and have fine-tuned and adjusted, and I see different senses of fulfillment. I want my desires for fulfillment. The quality of those desires has itself evolved. It's very much a closed loop experience between the volunteer and the experienced, and as a novice volunteer and the experienced volunteers in the society. That's very much a co-evolution, if you
Yeah,
will.
that's a little different vision than I had. Like what you're talking about, Martha, and maybe what you're talking about, Eric, is replacing the word members in this model to volunteers. So you have potential
Yeah,
volunteers, you have
actually.
novice volunteers, you have competent volunteers, you have expert volunteers, and maybe you still have teachers, trainers, and instructors of volunteers, which are maybe the management system of the volunteering.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know, what, do you want to stay on this model, Eric, or do you want to get into more of the details of membership planning that you've already worked on? Or is there something else to say about this model?
Well, why don't we run through this model and then see what else, like, let's look at all the components that we already put in here, and let's see if those components work, or maybe if we need to add something, if we change, like, for example, if we're turning this into a volunteer, so we have potential volunteer, novice volunteer, let's look at all the other inputs and make sure that these hold up for volunteering, or if certain tweaks need to be made, right? Like if you're looking at time to join, like is that as relevant for a volunteer as it is for a potential member? Is a fraction of novice members who are volunteers who temporarily lose interest? Yeah, let's talk about like what would cause a volunteer to lose interest, right? Like these, because I think the equations are going to be a little bit different because volunteers already have that connection to the system. So yeah, it might be good to go over all the independent parts of this model and find out if it holds up under a volunteering system.
Yeah, I think that maybe what we have is we have a co-flow here of members. We have the members, which are potential members and novice members, and then we have a co-flow similar to the instructors and trainers that how many novice members become volunteers, and how many competent members become volunteers, and how many expert members become volunteers, and then basically we have a mirror image of this model in the volunteers inside the society. Um, so so I think we can look at it basically as co-flows. Do you understand what co-flows are, Eric?
I know maybe a good explanation would be useful.
Well, basically, you can see a co-flow there between the becoming expert and the becoming instructor. So basically, those are actually the same people. They're not. And there's, you can see that the instructors are a subset of the experts, and so the flow the flow to become an instructor is part of the flow to become an expert. And basically you have a fraction of the competent members becoming who are becoming experts that will become instructors. So basically we would take the various flows in this model and say, okay, what is the fraction of novice members that become volunteers? And what is the fraction of competent members that become volunteers? and what's the fraction of expert members that become volunteers. And so basically, based on the amount of people moving from one category to another, you have also a co-flow, which is a subset of those people that move in this parallel system of volunteers.
So, okay, I think what you're saying is essentially all becoming experts are heading to expert, but some are becoming instructors.
Yeah, yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
so like, what about becoming experts and leaving the society? Is that a type of co-flow? Because right, because a certain fraction of becoming expert are actually just leaving. Is that or is that different than a co-flow?
Well, no, I think that's a flow. It's not a co-flow. Well, I guess no, it's not. A flow is basically where it's the same people are in two places at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Whereas a regular flow is what they call it's conservation of material. So basically, if in an actual flow, you can't have two people in the same place in different time. Two people, the same person in different places at the same time. Whereas in a co-flow, you can. So like I said, you can be an instructor as well as an expert. You can be a volunteer as well as a novice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe it's a good idea then to talk about what would drive somebody like Martha. You're in this, like I think you probably have some good ideas on this. So if a certain percentage of becoming experts are becoming instructors, so let's just say it's 10%, and the goal is to increase that. So let's say our midterm goal is 25%. I want to go from 10% to 25% of those members becoming volunteer. What are the mechanisms that are moving people, like increasing that flow? Like what's exciting people to become a volunteer? Like what things are making people want to become volunteer while they're on their journey to become an expert?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think here's one thing that I've noticed in myself and others is success and development, noticeable development of the society as a whole. I find my level of motivation and sense of impact on my time and ideas or skills, whatever, they are influenced by the movement that I see in the society itself. Constructive development of the society
Yeah,
itself.
For me, I think you're talking there about retention, because basically you're already a volunteer and you're seeing impact, and that means that you're retained as a volunteer because you're seeing progress. I'm not sure if that's what Eric was talking about. I think he was talking about attractiveness to become a volunteer if you're not a volunteer now.
Okay.
And
yeah.
so what would someone who isn't a volunteer now desire to get out of volunteering?
I think that level of desire is impacted by an awful lot of things. I think it has to do all the way back with the culture within which one is raised. I think I think cultural backgrounds is one thing.
There's very little we can do about that. That's an externality.
It is.
I think
but
maybe
it's there.
it definitely is there, and definitely we can measure it. But we're looking at things that we can impact.
Okay.
Culture of society is a good one. You could use that, like the culture of the society itself. Right?
Can we impact that?
Background.
Can we actually do anything to impact?
No. But it impacts the volunteer. I'm saying, like, if I love the culture, I may want to volunteer because I love the culture.
Oh, culture of the society. I get it.
Yeah.
I was thinking of society as a big.
No.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
both of those. But I think in culture of the society, I think you have to break that down into a bit of a supply chain thing, is what is the visibility to the to potential volunteers of the culture of the society. I don't think Joe Q public who's taking a system dynamics course at whichever university, this is not rhetorical, I really don't know what the visibility of the attractiveness of the culture in the system dynamics society is at those far away places. And unfortunately,
Yeah, we might want to just call the System Dynamics Society the SDS, just so there's no confusion.
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
And,
I think visibility, which I think is improving, fortunately, due to technology in part, and due to just simple growth of SD and STSD. I think the image itself also plays a role.
But isn't that, not to be negative here, but isn't that more of an attraction of the member to become a member rather than a volunteer?
Well,
You know, like what would attract a member to become a volunteer as opposed to attracting a student to become a member?
okay, I see what you're saying. So they're already in the society. Yeah, very worthy question.
Well,
Here's what.
Okay.
Sorry, but here's one. Sorry, I have to cut you off. One motivator is desire to look good on one's CV and resume, because in the academic field and the field of life, actually, so much more value is now being placed on
And I think,
what's the person doing outside of their academic or their work thing. People want to see people fleshed out in community involvement. So
I think
I would say
also
that's one factor.
experience, you know, it's like an internship, right? You get
Yeah.
experience from it, and maybe
Yeah.
some of the experience is experience in leadership. So you know, if you
Sure.
become a volunteer and say, you know, you move into a leadership position in the SDS,
Right.
maybe that leads to, like I say, a better resume because you're
Yeah.
showing some leadership. So that's
Yeah.
something we could advertise, right? We could say, you know, that
Yeah.
by becoming a volunteer in the society, you'll gain experience, and this will help you, you know, to learn more about leadership. That's a
Right.
huge part of the Toastmasters organization. The
Yeah.
Toastmasters organization teaches public speaking, obviously, but they also teach leadership, and the way they teach leadership is by becoming a member of the management team that manages a club of the Toastmasters organization. So, for example, like you said, you are the I guess the nominal president of the Canadian chapter of the Systematic Society, which is a leadership position, and hopefully, you know, you can see that being a good experience that helps you to learn how to lead,
Yeah.
and possibly, like I said, now you're not looking for a job, but maybe there's an opportunity there to leverage that for some other position.
Yeah. Yeah. I would also say here's another attractant, and these days that this is going to be huge, is networking, meeting other people, networking.
Okay, yeah,
I
that's
think
good.
that has increasing value itself. That's its
Yeah.
own
Well,
upward
you know,
curve.
that is the reason I became the membership director in Incosi Canada, was because, or the reason I wanted to become was because I wanted to know who the members were of Incosi
Yeah.
Canada, and maybe make connections there, and maybe increase my LinkedIn connections.
Right. Right. A
So
third.
so maybe LinkedIn could be, you know, an important thing to mention as well, is that we're connecting people through our networking of the Systematic Society, and that can increase your LinkedIn profile for followers or connections, which can
Yeah.
also help you, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Huge. What do they say? Yeah, the old saying, more gets missed by not looking than by not knowing. I think we're recognizing increasingly the importance of maintaining a balance between looking and knowing.
Yeah, well,
But
like I said, leveraging, like you say, the leadership capability from volunteering, and also leveraging LinkedIn and networking could be, you know, real attraction to volunteering.
I think maybe we kind of sum that up into a stock called perceived potential of desirable future, right?
Yeah,
Because like if I want to be a better
great.
leader, if I want to
Yeah.
network with more people, that's a
Yeah.
very desirable future for me. That's growth in a direction that I want to go to. So
Yeah.
an increase in perceived potential of that desirable future by volunteering might attract me to volunteering if it's
Correct.
meaningful, if that connection is meaningful.
Yeah. Yes. And a third one in that category of summing up for a category of perceived potential would be of a desirable future would definitely be volunteering. Definitely provides an opportunity to practice one's systems thinking and system dynamics, STSD skills on the ground in real life.
well,
Implementation
that's
skills.
interesting. That's
Implementation
interesting.
skills.
That's interesting because I don't think that that is really pushed very much. You know, I think maybe it is, but I think that outside of what we're doing, no one thinks of applying SD to SD.
Okay, so it's funny you say that because
Right.
when I first started
Right.
like going to those meetings with the System Dynamics Society, I asked them like, "You guys are teaching all this stuff, but like you're using none of it in these meetings. Like I've been to plenty of these meetings, and you don't even use systems thinking talk. It's like, why?" Like I thought like that would be for me. That was one of the benefits why I thought it would be so interesting in doing those meetings is because I got to see the systems thinking and system dynamics getting used in real time, but they didn't, and it was almost a bummer.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Well,
I see.
I think, you know, I suffered the same thing as well in operational research. You know, we were advising people, the military in my case, we were advising them on how to do their business better, but we weren't using our own techniques to do our own business.
Yeah.
And
But here's a positive thing, guys. That can be a perfect setting to invite one to develop one's leadership skills because one needs to become a leader as a volunteer to show that this is an opportunity to use these skills, and you don't have to have a PhD in whatever and be teaching at whatever university to exercise leadership and bring SD to SD as a volunteer.
mhm.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I was talking to Ivan about this last week, and this is something I think that needs further talking is how do you do that, Martha, without coming off as somebody who's claiming they know their system better than them, right? How do you do it without saying, hey, you guys are, you know, these experts in this field, let me, you know, direct what you guys are doing within your field that you're experts on. How do you translate that in a way that doesn't come off as like arrogant or I'm trying to tell you what to do, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know, so here's my strategy because I'm very I whether it's there or not, I am very sensitive to that. And all I do, what I mean, I'm making more sure to do is to say, you know I'm sort of an outsider here, and I know I sometimes come off as being a know-it-all, but you know what? Nothing could be further than the truth. Here, why I am here, a big reason why I am here is I absolutely crave quality, thoughtful, impactful conversation, and that's the drug, that's my dopamine hit here in doing volunteer work as
Yeah, but
even above just taking a
I think
course.
Eric is talking about a business negotiation. You know, so for
Well,
example, you know,
state
how
where you're at.
how do you in a consultancy, how do you get cooperation from the organization without saying that they know better than you do, without, you know, saying, you know, that, oh, I know everything and therefore you know, you should follow what I say. And and I think in that area, I think, you know, uh, I would emphasize the value added that we can provide. So, you know, so when I was consulting in national defense, I knew that I had some mathematical skills that weren't available to everybody. So I was looking always for the value added that I could provide with my mathematical skills to the organization. And I think that's the way we approached it. Yeah, I think you're right, Martha, in a sense, but I think Eric's primary concern was in a consulting role.
Is that true, Eric? Do you agree
Yeah,
with
but
what
like
you said?
it's for what you're saying, because it's the same thing in what you're saying, I think, Martha. Because what you're saying, if I have this right, is if the System Dynamics Society wasn't using systems thinking or system dynamics to do their meetings, and you're an outsider, and you notice that, and you think it's a good idea for them to be using that in order to make their membership better, well, then pitching that to them and saying, hey, I'm observing that you guys don't use this stuff. Why don't you use this? Or how could we integrate that into our meetings more often so that we are practicing the things we're pitching or we're preaching? How saying that in a way, yeah. So I think pitching that to them is to me, it's the same as like coming into an organization saying, I see you guys need help with engagement. I feel like I can help increase your engagement by using system dynamics because that's something you're not familiar with, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
see what you're saying.
society is familiar with.
Oh no, I'm yeah, that part I was talking about a different organization.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've really come up with some good ideas here. Let's move on. I think Martha has already mentioned this idea of impact a number of times, and I think that, in my opinion, that gets into the retention idea of retaining volunteers. So maybe we'll spend a few minutes talking about that now. Um, so. So I've noted impact, but another thing I think it obvious is very obvious is recognition and also
Yeah, yeah,
appreciation.
yeah,
Recognition and appreciation go hand
yeah,
in hand.
very true, very true.
And if you're not appreciated as a volunteer, you'll quickly think
Yeah,
twice about what you're doing. And so appreciation and recognition, like for example, I in the mentoring program, I was working really hard on the mentoring program, and like 2 years ago I got an outstanding volunteer award, but last year I didn't. And so does that mean that you only get an outstanding volunteer award once, or does that mean, in my opinion, what happened was in this last year we didn't even think about having outstanding volunteer awards?
are you talking about the SDS?
Yeah, the SDS. Yeah.
Well, I remember 2 years ago, you and I both got got outstanding volunteer awards. I confess, I was not expecting to get any. Well, now maybe performance fault. I I sort of thought, well, when you get it once, it's sort of someone else's turn. Or I was thinking along different. I had different
But I don't think
expectations.
anybody got an outstanding volunteer award last year. Did you see any outstanding volunteer?
I wasn't at the conference, so I don't.
Okay, because
I don't know.
I didn't see any presentation of outstanding volunteers. Maybe I missed it, but I'm not sure. But anyways, that's
Well,
if I'm right that there wasn't an outstanding volunteer a section of the conference, I think that was a mistake. But like I said, I did, being a volunteer, I appreciated the outstanding volunteer recognition.
and you know what? I'll be honest with you. And the SDS wouldn't know this, but I found that when I shared with friends that I had received an outstanding volunteer award for the System Dynamics Society, when I shared that with, it's like my volunteerism. Uh, it gave some legitimate. It increased the legitimacy of my involvement. I think in those people's eyes, that I was actually given what's basically an international award. So legitimacy, I think, is another possibly a dimension to consider for volunteer work. Is the legitimacy of like don't underestimate the impact
I
at
think
many levels of being a volunteer.
I agree that that's great, and I don't know if I got as much value out of it, but I really appreciate it. But here's another alternative problem that say maybe a side effect or a negative consequence is the outstanding inflation outstanding. Basically, if, for example, you are a volunteer but you're not outstanding, you might also be turned off. So recognizing volunteers who aren't outstanding, is that something else, or is that part of it? Volunteers are volunteers. Should everybody be outstanding?
I would love to build on that, because I think there is, I will say this, we're a very time dependent system. Dynamics is 99% of it is trying to see how things evolve through time. And I think there is an horrific undervaluing or under recognizing, actually, more, as you say, Ivan, of not just what the task is, but the amount of time that it takes. Doesn't matter if you're clipping videos or creating conversations, doesn't matter what you're doing. Everyone has got a similar lifespan. Everyone's time it is in certain dimensions of equal importance, whether you're the novice entry or the president of the society. The impact on the amount of time in proportion to a person's lifespan is the same. And I have every plan. I have an idea that brings attention to honoring the treating. How would the world be if every single person's time was valued equally? And I know we work in wages per hour, but it gets it into that. It gets it into the emotional intelligence realm beyond the I. It takes it into the EQ and blends EQ with IQ. I have an idea that I'm going to pitch to Megan Colville, who's in charge of the volunteers, where the amount of time, not the impact, not the quality, but sheer amount of time. People have no idea the amount of time that someone like Birgit Kapansky or Lynn Malchinsky or Martha Toy, Eric Roseman, all of us are spending time. And I have an idea that I'm going to pitch to Megan to start artistically showing that, to be honest with you.
But like I said,
it's not visible.
Okay, there's 2 points here again. Is okay, going back to the outstanding volunteer. Let's say you do spend a lot of time, and you get an outstanding volunteer award, and then someone else who did not spend a lot of time got an outstanding volunteer award. You might feel somewhat pissed off at that, and so so I think that there's a two-edged sword here with recognition in this way.
I agree.
And and then you get into this time and quality, idea, because the society is all about quality. So an impact, like you said already, you can have a very small amount of time with a huge amount of impact, which I think you need to balance with the amount of time.
I agree. I think it's a balance of the two. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's one and the other.
Yeah. Anyways, so let's think about that some more. But here's a thought that Eric and I have thought about a little bit in the past is badges. Did you have any thoughts about badges that you wanted to mention, Eric, or should I carry on the conversation?
Tim, I think they're unbelievably important. I mean, in everything from, and this again, from gaming to the military, they use badges for everything, for all kinds of progression system, because it's a reflection of your progression. And that's what I think what you're talking about here is it's meaningful progression. Like when you're in a system and you don't know where you're at within that system, like every system you go into, you're progressing at on some level. But if I'm not sure how impactful my progression is, you could quickly get burned out. You might not know where you're at. You might still feel like you're at the beginning when you're not. So I think badges are great recognition of your progression within your system. So it comes back to personal impact. how much impact is the system having on me, and am I seeing any potential future growth that's desirable, that I have that's desirable. So yeah, I think badges, and they work really well because they get prettier and they get nicer the higher you go, right? Like particularly in gaming, they you start with like a nice badge, then they take that badge and they start adding glows to it, and they start adding like different elements to it, so you can actually feel in a weird way. It's feedback. It's a weird way for you. It's an interesting way to get good feedback on your progression, make you want to continue to progress.
Yeah.
So are those, Eric, are those badges associated with skill development then,
Yep.
or simply okay, so skill
It's usually some kind of skill development. Yeah. So
skill
it's
acquisition.
so for example, some of the competitive games, they call it laddering. So when you go online and you're competing against other people, you have a point pool. So if I win this match, I take points from my opponent, and he loses points. And if I lose, I then lose points from that pool. So that way, over time, you get to see how your accumulation. And once you reach certain levels, you get rewarded for that. So yeah, your badges are a representation of your overall skill development. Yeah.
Well, one of the things in the military, in the Canadian military, medals are very seldom given out. Whereas in the US military, they basically overdo it with medals. You get a medal for everything you do in the US military. So you'll see US military people, especially the high level people, with a whole chest full of medals. And so, that again is medal inflation, or, you're getting all these medals, but maybe you didn't deserve as many medals as you got. Maybe these are just, more space that you're taking up. So anyways, I think again, badges. I like the idea of progression, and I like the idea of recognition, and I like the idea of badges, and I think they have to be earned, and they have to be important. They have to be considered significant.
Yeah, because it's a status thing.
There is the opposite dimension though of status development is and fulfillment and reward, and what do I get out of this? But there is the whole dimension of altruism as well, and I don't think that that's a very normative term. But I think as a concept, it is in there somewhere. I think different people. I don't think that we can speak for someone else who may be there for entirely altruistic motives, and they are like on fire with it.
I think what you're talking about is the psychology of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Basically, a lot of people will volunteer or will work on something for the intrinsic value. They just want to do it. Okay. And they get value from doing it. Other people want to get rewards like extra pay. People will only work on something if they get paid to do it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the interesting things psychology has found is that giving someone with intrinsic motivation a small amount of payment makes them feel worse.
Yeah.
They feel, that actually they should have, to give them a small amount is worse than giving them nothing. They'd rather be noted for doing the work for nothing than they would have been than they would for being recognized with a very small reward. So that's an interesting, an interesting side effect or unintended consequence.
Yep. And again, I plan to bring it onto a discussion table, start a discussion around the structure of incentivizing in the volunteer realm in the society, because I think there are as many reasons for volunteering as there are people who want to volunteer, and everyone's kind of nuanced. That the student who needs something on their CV is very different from the Martha Toy and the Lynn Malchisky and blah blah blah. And why can we not offer a spectrum of compensation, if you will, and the volunteer themselves they get to decide in their when they're applying for becoming a volunteer, do they want do they want incentivizing? Do they want some kind of compensation, whether it be books at the bookstore or so many hours of mentoring with so and so, or do they specifically not want anything? Why can we not give them that choice in their sort of volunteer starting profile? They may evolve and say, well, once I've done 100 hours, yeah, I want to start to get some kind of recompense for this. Give the choice to them. Don't make this a one-way conversation in them. Let them give their input.
I think what you could do with that might be interesting then is give it to them. Like, I think even if you're a volunteer and you don't want anybody like recognizing what you did, still maybe like an email that you got that said, hey, thanks for the 100 hours. That could still feel good, right? That's not going to kill off somebody's motivation, like who's volunteering, but maybe the person who gets it gets the choice on whether they're going to share that or not. In other words, I got a recognition reward that said, hey, thanks for your volunteering and you did some really good work in this. And here's a badge that says you did 100 hours or something. Thank you for that. But like, you don't have to share that. That could stay with you and only you. But if you're a volunteer who wants to put that on their profile because they want other people to see, hey, been a volunteer and I put X amount of hours in and I want other people to see that because I like status. Well, then they have the choice to share it. So both people are getting it, but you get the choice on whether you're sharing it or not.
That's a good point.
That's a really good dimension.
As another example of that I'm aware of is I don't know if you have this in the States, Eric, but in Canada we have something called the United Way, which is a volunteer or not a volunteer, a charitable organization. And there was two people that I worked with who donated huge amounts of money to the United Way, totally out of proportion with everybody else's donations. And the lady who was collecting the United Way wanted to recognize their contributions. And so she advertised, or she presented them with something telling them, telling everyone how much they had contributed. Like they contributed like $5,000 to the United Way or $6,000 to the United Way. Everybody else was contributing $10 or $5 or I was contributing $100, that was considered a lot. They were contributing $5,000, $6,000 and they did not want to be recognized. They were embarrassed when this lady recognized them. They felt very bad about the whole thing being recognized. So that's it. I like that idea of sharing, choice of sharing.
There was a story about Denzel Washington a few years ago. He was buying up apartment homes in areas for wounded soldiers to come home and have a place to stay and bring their families and things. And it was all anonymous. And it got leaked that he was the one buying it. And then it went out on the papers and stuff that Denzel did this thing. And he was furious about that. He wanted it to be anonymous. He did not want anybody knowing it was him. He was doing this out of the goodness of his heart, not because he wanted to look good for the public. So he was furious that this leaked out and that it was shared that he was spending money on this stuff.
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
It just makes me think that one method, one strategy, I think, to improving volunteerism is going to be how do we get to know who potential volunteers us, like the onus is on us. How do we learn about the myriad of profiles of potential volunteers?
Yeah, I think that's a practical problem of logistics. How do you track the volunteers and where
do you look?
Is there a database of volunteers? Is that intrusive to have a database of volunteers? Exactly. How do you track that? What's the logistics of giving out badges, and what's the logistics of giving out recognition, and what's the logistics of monitoring people's volunteer work? Those are all important problems that have to be resolved, because again, we go back to volunteering. Everything has to be done by somebody. And so that's where Eric, I think, is talking about automation wherever possible. And how do we automate this? And possibly, like, I think another aspect of it, although it leads to inflation, is like you say, giving the choice whether you want to report your volunteering. And so, you can either, you can put the onus of the tracking of volunteer work on the individual who's volunteering rather than on the SDS to track it. But that then again leads to, possibly other side effects. Just another quick comment, maybe, I don't know how much time we have. Oh, we're past our time. Anyways, one other quick idea that I said is, I've given a lot of presentations for the Latin American or the Colombian chapter of the Systemdynamics Society. And every time I give a presentation, they send me a certificate. And when I got that certificate at the beginning, I thought this was great. And I really cherished that certificate. But after giving many presentations and getting many certificates, I found that I wasn't really cherishing them as much. So so how do we get around that problem of
Gaming's figured that one out too. You increase the experience points necessary for your next badge. So if you get one for a presentation, maybe the next one you don't get until you get 5 presentations.
But then again, you have the negative effect of doing something and not getting recognition.
Okay, so then so then you just have to experiment. We have to try to find a balance. Because if too many is too many and not enough is not enough, then then you just have to keep play with that middle line.
I think maybe the way to do it, like you say, progression is important, and maybe the way to do it is to, like you say, track it and say, this is your award for giving 1 presentation, and then the second award is for giving 2 presentations. And every time you give a presentation, it's tracked somewhere, so that now the certificate represents 3 presentations or 4 presentations. So basically, it's you get a certificate every time, but that certificate is more important with the more presentations you give. That's something that like I say, a progression is a good idea, but I think you have to still provide the recognition at each step.
I have to go here, but in about 15 seconds, maybe part of the conversation of logistics and practicalities and optimization, an element of that could be, well, what's the natural lifespan, expected lifespan of a volunteer to begin with, and when are there going to be declining benefits? Sort of, what's the marginal benefit for the effort that it takes to get a natural lifespan to go that little bit further, eke out their, whatever, in their dying volunteer hours. What's the effort? Is it sort of a cross loop, too much effort for too little marginal gain? That concept as well, if you're going to talk about optimizing. I really have to go here, folks.
Okay, great. If you want to stay on for a few minutes, we can still chat.
Yeah, I can stay on. Bye, Martha.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Always great to see you guys and to be in the group. See you next week. Yeah, and thanks for that book heads up, Eric.
Yeah, it's great. You'll like it.
Yeah, good. Looking forward. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. What did you think of that whole thing?
That was great. I think we got into some really good stuff. So I think if I were to overview the whole conversation, I would say there's 3 when it comes to volunteering. A volunteering system represents 3 components, 3 essential components. There's the management system, which is like who are the volunteers and what are they doing. There's the recognition system or the retention system, where recognition falls under. There's within the retention system, there's recognition, paying attention to each of the impact per volunteers, as a whole, appreciation, legitimacy. These are really good things that fit under the retention system. And then there's the attraction system. How do we get more volunteers in here, right? So the base of three cores of every system. There's the input, the stock, and the output. Or well, I guess retention is not really an output, but so the management system itself, or the volunteering system itself, if you're not, like you said, like last year they weren't handing out anything, which to you suggested that they weren't paying attention to it. They dropped the ball on the retention system, which also suggests they don't prioritize volunteer retention, right? That's not an interest to them. They're interested in other things, which might be attraction or or maybe they don't have the bandwidth for retention, right? Maybe they only have certain amount of energy or focus, attention that they could spend on stuff, and they chose to withdraw retention because they just don't have enough members to work on that retention because it's not automated or because
Yeah,
it's
I
not,
think, I
simple.
think, like I said, I think that's a huge differentiation. I think that basically the more volunteers, the more management's required. So that's where hopefully you get into this automation idea. So, hopefully you can automate as much of the management as possible so that you don't have that negative consequence of increasing attraction leads to decreasing management or
Yeah,
decreasing
yeah.
recognition or decreasing retention, so that the management system, like I say, it builds with the number of volunteers. So if you only have a small number of volunteers, you only need a small management system. If you have
Yeah.
a large number of volunteers, you need a large management system. But hopefully there's economies of scale that can come with automation that basically, adding a couple more volunteers is not going to increase your management load.
Right, increase. It's not going to increase effort.
Yeah.
Yeah. The system takes care of itself, which I really feel like we're heading in that direction because even what I have so far is good. It's just like there are little components within the system, and each component is just going to take time to like flesh out and work on. That's why, like, I think Sunday will be a good conversation because I'll give you the overview and I'll show you how it works, and then we can decide what are the first couple of components that we want to work on that are the most meaningful because these individual components are going to take a minute. Like for example, I think the expiration date is a good one, right? Where we have to get people's names in, we have to get their expiration dates in there. Then you have to get the formulas in there that say, at 2 weeks to expiration, you get an alert. Where do you want that alert? Do you want that alert in an email? Do you have a to-do system like that? The thing I emailed you about the beta for this application, it's a really cool application that integrates well with Notion or any other database. Also, it integrates with your email and your calendar. So it's a really cool system. It's a really cool area to actually. I can share if I could share my screen with you real quick. I can show you.
Want to stop recording here?
Yeah, we can stop recording. I'm going to share my screen.